you've mentioned the word supply chain a couple of times, and I find that I only know about supply chain and supply chain economics and all that because I have two engineers among my kids. So tell us about why we should care about the words supply chain.
Well, we should care because the supply chain is where the products that we love and enjoy are actually made. It's where it actually comes from. So we might have brands that we're really loyal to. We might have fashion brands, food brands, etc. that we love and adore, and we like buying their products. But really, really rarely are those brands actually making those products. Like almost never does that occur in the modern economy anymore. So instead, they would have supply chains. These might be complex supply chains. They might buy from a guy who buys from a guy who buys from a guy, where there's a factory that's a couple of nodes away, which then has got multiple inputs. Someone's making the cotton, someone's making the button, someone's making the zippers. There are raw materials that are coming into that. So the supply chain is all of that, all of those components and layers and levels that have gone into making a product that often then lands in our supermarkets or in our retail outlets or online under often a different brand. So we need to, I think, recognize that brands have become slightly abstract entities, in the 21st century, where actually what matters is probably, the people that have sewn that shirt together, the people that have grown that tomato, the people that have, worked to bring together that, ketchup or whatever it is that you're buying. And they might be making for multiple brands. They might be making for a whole host of different companies for the local market, etc. But it just lands in our shelves as under one brand, under one name, and that's the one we interact with. So supply chain actually opens up the reality of the impact that is going on, the reality of the production, the real economy is happening in the supply chain. All the other stuff, the marketing and the finance and people sitting with spreadsheets and advertising and planning, a lot of that's happening under the brand and the company in the global north. The production and the making is happening elsewhere. And that's the bit that actually makes the products that we love.
Okay. So in our daily lives, we might love a certain brand. I don't want to pick on anybody in particular. But I think what you're telling us is that we might there's a future where we might be able to do a little research and find out through transparency, track and trackability, where people get all the raw materials to get that thing that we buy and love. For instance, I'm looking at the way Patagonia operates. You might know 1,000 things that are questionable about Patagonia in particular, but if we're going to have to pick on a brand, Patagonia is trying very, very hard to make sure its supply chain is right with our future. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're absolutely right. It is. It's
so
above and beyond.
Yeah, what I know a little bit about is that turns out textiles are part of this gigantic waste stream that most of us would not think about textiles and clothing, the materials raw and afterwards being part of a giant waste problem. But Patagonia is trying to address that. They are always trying to honor fair trade policies. Talk to us about how a company like Patagonia may be at least have elements in working hard to try to be what the future looks like for big business.
Yeah, I mean, a company that is genuinely interested in the conditions in its supply chain is going to do a number of things. Firstly, it's going to create longer term partnerships with its suppliers. So what we've ended up with is a world where, there's a product description that goes to a whole host of different factories that might make that for you, and whoever bids lowest and seems to do the right quality gets the contract. And next year it might be a different factory, next month it might be a different factory. So you're playing off factories against each other to try to drive down prices. That leads to a huge amount of problems. So for instance, if you're a worker in a factory, say in East Asia, South Asia, Latin America, Africa, and you're working in one of these companies, they don't know if they're going to have an order again in a few months' time. So they're probably putting you in a temporary contract. It might even be day-to-day employment. So you've got no certainty in your life. You don't know if you're going to have a job next week. And that's because the company that's buying from them, the brand that is often lauded and has got a fantastic public image has not made a commitment to them long term, has not said, look, let's have a 5-year commitment. We're going to work together to reduce the waste. We're going to work together to increase wages. We're going to work together to minimize the environmental impacts, and we're going to make sure we get to the right quality and to the right prices. But look, we're with you through thick and thin. So that's what the best companies are doing. They're picking their supplier, and if they can tell you who their supplier is, they can tell you who their factories are, then actually that's the clue. Because you asked earlier, how would you make a distinction between who you're going to buy with? Look at how much information they're providing about where is their product from. Do they know who's even making it? Some of the brands barely know themselves where it's made. They've sent it to an agent who's then commissioned a bunch of factories to do bits and pieces, and God knows what's going on, behind the scenes. And actually, that's convenient. We'd rather not know something sometimes, like if you're the brand, you'd rather not feel like you're going to be held to account on everything that's going on in the production centers and people's lives down there. So look at are they publishing factory lists? Are they telling you where stuff is made? Are they, there are some companies, some businesses. So if you go to, for instance, the Fair Trade Federation in the United States, you'll see a lot of them know the artisan who made it, not just the enterprise and the business and the workshop and the factory, but they'll know the artisan. They'll know the individual person who's sewn that shirt or who's created that handicraft product. And that level of knowledge about production is probably a best clue about how engaged that brand is with what the reality is in their supply chain.